Hello and welcome to Com 404. In this Week 11 update video, I'd like to fill you in on what you can expect for classes 21 and 22 and some things that might be coming around the corner after that. So in this update video, I'll first give you some reminders, secondly detail some brief notes about how I'm doing in this transition and give you an opportunity for some extra credit if you reach out on that Google Hangouts line, and then third, I'll give you an overview of the week to continue. So first, a few reminders. One thing to note is the course material has already been posted for both the Tuesday and Thursday lectures on political communication campaigns and health communication campaigns. And so this week you're welcome to work a little ahead if you find yourself with some extra time. The second thing to note is that the writing journal number 6 is due on Tuesday, so make sure that you submit that as soon as possible before midnight on April 7th. And finally, it's worth noting that your next major assignment right around the bend, the fact, argument, outline, and paper assignment, is due not this Thursday, but next Thursday. So make sure you give yourself some time to research and write that paper assignment. Now that some brief reminders are out of the way, I wanted to take just a moment to encourage all of you to practice some self-care and also to get some fresh air. With so many of us self-quarantined and practicing social distancing, it's getting increasingly difficult to find that sense of fresh air or that connection with nature. However, I did find myself just a brief moment this past week to get out into the fresh air and to go on a brief hike, and I was sure to check with Governor Sisolak's stay-at-home order to note that it does indicate that you are allowed to go outdoors for things like outdoor exercise and even hiking, assuming those various trails and locations, recreational areas around us are open. Many of them are closed, so check first before you go. The second thing I'll note during this transition is that it might be helpful in practicing some self-care to take some distance from the news. That's something you'll rarely hear a professor of persuasion or critical thinking say. I'm often encouraging my students to be watching more of the news and paying closer attention to the local events around them. However, during this difficult emergency circumstance and with all of the constant coverage, I would encourage you to consider reducing the amount of time you spend engaging those news reports that otherwise might be alarming, increasing your anxiety, and otherwise funneling stress. That said, it does remain important to stay up to date on the newest information, and I would encourage you to make sure you're following the appropriate sources. Groups like the Center for Disease Control and the World Health Organization are principal sources to be paying close attention to at this time, rather than perhaps local news, blogs, or other sources. The third thing I wanted to do is provide those of you who might be following along with these videos an opportunity to earn some extra credit by sending me a Google Hangouts message or email letting me know what your quarantine quirks might be. I know in the process of being cooped up and social distant, I've learned a few things about myself, and one of those things is that I'm a little obsessive about the amount of juice I have in my house, and I start to get nervous when I run low on drink flavor options. Something I didn't previously know about myself and was perhaps ready to accept is I'm less willing or interested in hoarding toilet paper and presumably more interested in hoarding varieties of Minute Maid. Go ahead and send me whatever your quarantine quirks might be, and I'll be happy to add a few extra credit points to that attendance column of your Canvas course site. Third and finally, and certainly most importantly as we transition through these update videos, is a brief weekly overview of what's to come in classes 21 and 22. Of course, Class 21 presents us a focus on political communication campaigns, and so we'll be primarily focused on presidential campaigns, but of course, as you think about your upcoming political campaign paper assignment, or social marketing or health campaign assignment, in the context of political communication campaigns, you could certainly consider campaigns that are focused on policies or local races as well. Additionally, Class 22, Thursday's video lecture, brings a focus on health communication campaigns, and towards that end, we'll be focusing on interpersonal and mass-mediated action areas, or ways that we might be able to use persuasion and communication to create change in those unique contexts. The second thing I wanted to do before we close today is provide you some details about the upcoming FACT campaign paper and outline assignment. And to do that, I'll first overview the rubric and talk a little bit about the expectations of both the paper and the outline, and then finally I'll close this video by discussing some of the questions and points of analysis you might consider for the various different topics should you choose a social marketing, health communication, or political campaign. So first, it might be helpful to look over the assignment description before you begin writing the paper. The first thing to note is that the assignment presents you the task of choosing either a social marketing, health, or political communication campaign. That choice is up to you. From that choice, you then write a 5 to 6 page paper that makes an original and declarative fact-based argument. In other words, you're not saying what these campaigns should do. That's a policy-based argument. And you're not going to be arguing what the values of those campaigns are. That might be a values-based argument. Instead, you'll be making a fact-based claim, perhaps about what is most effective, what is most theoretically grounded, or what the appeals that are used to move and address a particular audience are in that campaign's media and materials that you've looked at. So the purpose of this paper is to synthesize the lecture materials we've covered since making this online transition from classes 17 to 23. If you have some questions about how to build an effective fact-based case, you're encouraged to relate that back to class 7 or consider some of the details about structuring effective reasoning to build a strong outline and model of your argument in classes 3 and also classes 6. The paper assignment is worth 50 points and should follow a particular structure. The outline is worth 25 points, and there is a template for that structure provided as well. As we think a little bit about the outline, the purpose of the outline is to ask you to build a strong fact-based argument. To do that, you'll model that argument in 3 clear pieces of reasoning. And so your main point 1, 2, and 3 should each present distinctly different types of reasoning. You might make in main point 1 an argument by example. You might in main point 2 make an argument by correlation, and you might conclude in your main point 3 by making an argument by sign or perhaps an argument by causal generalization. A well-crafted outline will structure 3 distinct forms of reasoning, each with at least 2 supporting points that provide a warranted reason why that data or why that claim justifies the overall fact thesis presented by the author. Next, I think it would be helpful to look over the fact arguments paper and outline rubrics. You can see the rubrics are provided here, and of course also available on the Canvas course site and linked with the assignment description. These rubrics are built so that you can review what the criteria for quality are, and you can choose to invest your time in the places that you think are most effective or more strategic to get the grade you feel you need to earn in this course or desire to aspire toward. As you're reviewing the outline, you might note that the outline includes things like including a minimum of 5 sources using APA style. That those sources should relate both to the campaign and the artifacts you're examining, but also that you should be citing material that relates back to the readings you've been doing since we've made this online transition. Toward that end, it might be helpful to think about how you might cite materials related to inoculation theory, elaboration likelihood modeling, narrative theory, or one of the other theories we've studied as you develop your paper's argument. The strongest papers will include main points that provide research that links both primary, materials associated with the artifacts and campaign you're examining, and also secondary supporting research based on the theories and details you've been learning about in this most recent transition of the course. Finally, before we discuss some questions for analyses and ways that you might generate strong thesis statements for the 3 different types of paper you might write, it might be helpful to look over the outline template provided online. You can see that the outline template encourages you to think about your introduction and conclusion, and then provides a very specific structure for the way that you should articulate your main points. Be sure to follow that structure to earn those 20 to 25 points available for that outline assignment. Those who do not follow that structure will likely earn less than 20 out of 25 on the outline assignment. Finally, you can see at the very bottom of that outline template that I've started including some ideas for theses that you might think about as you develop your campaign argument. Review those, and return to this particular video for more as we continue on discussing some questions you might think about for both your thesis construction and also for modes of analyses.